Okay.
No
All right.
problem.
So we are talking about the Mitzvah of Bayis Moli Sfarim. That means to have a house full of books, to have a big library of Jewish books. This is an initiative that the Rebbe launched following the Yom Kippur War. That people should buy and have stocked in their homes lots of books. Why? What's this all about? It says multiple, explanations that the Rebbe gave for why this is important. One of them is a very interesting one that I don't think you would have guessed. And that is that there is famously a mitzvah in the Torah, write a Sefer Torah. You know about this?
Oh, no, Torah. Yeah.
To write an actual Sefer Torah.
I think so.
Yeah, for every person to commission somebody to write their own Sefer Torah. Now, I don't know about you. I don't have any Sefer Torah in my house. I don't even have a Sefer Torah from my Chabad house. Never mind from myself. So what is this idea of having your own Sefer Torah? Why is nobody doing it? If it's a mitzvah, which should apply everywhere, why is nobody keeping it? So the commentaries throughout the ages have given explanations to this idea. And one of the explanations that's given is that the Torah wasn't just talking about writing a Sefer Torah. It was to write a Torah in the sense that to have Torah books written or learned from, and since the way Torah was given was there was an oral law and a written law, and the written law was really that was all that there was written down. The oral law was meant to stay oral, and then at some point it had to be transcribed because the sages saw that it would be forgotten. But really, the way it was meant to be was that there would be a written law and an oral law. So the oral law wasn't meant to be written down. So what was going to be written down? Only the written law, only the 5 books of Moses. So therefore, that's what the mitzvah was when the Torah was given. But now that we transcribe the Torah, other parts of the Torah as well, so the mitzvah can be fulfilled by having those other books of the Torah also in our libraries. So by filling our house with Torah books, we are fulfilling this mitzvah of having a Balas Mali Sfar. Now, another way we fulfill this is by having letters in the Torah written in our name for us, which is something that children especially are encouraged to have right when they're born, to have a letter in the Sefer Torah written for them. And that's also part of it, because one of the ways to fulfill the mitzvah is not just to have a whole Sefer Torah written for you, but even just to have a Sefer Torah fixed, or a letter in the Sefer Torah already makes it like that's your Sefer Torah, which a letter was written for you in it. Okay, that is one idea which the Rebbe spoke about and what's important. The Rebbe also spoke about that having books on the shelf, which are Torah ideas, is going to bring you to study them, because they're sitting there anyway, might as well use them. And so it's going to encourage the study of Torah in the house, which affects the atmosphere of the house. So everything, there's a net positive just from having these things in the house. It creates a different vibe in the home. And therefore, it's important to have these Torah books. So in order to, when you're talking about doing a class on this topic, and also it's Hanukkah, so we decided to do it like this. What I decided to do is to take some, different, famous works of Torah works and study them and their connection to Hanukkah. So this is going to be partly a Hanukkah class and partly a class on certain works, which we'll look at. We'll look at mainly the Gemara, the Beis Yosef, which we've spoken about many times in this class, but we never actually looked inside what it looks like, and then the Lavush, which we'll look at it too. So we'll get to that in a moment, but let's begin with some basic Hanukkah, not basic, but some Hanukkah insights, and that will lead us into our discussion today. So Hanukkah, the word Hanukkah. Why is the holiday of Hanukkah called Hanukkah?
Rededication.
Rededication, good. So the temple is defiled, and we have to rededicate the temple to make it pure again, holy again. Beautiful. Another explanation.
The word Hanukkah or
word Hanukkah? The commentaries point out the word Hanukkah is actually a mixture of two words, chanu, ka. which means they rested on Kafeh, the 25th day of Kislev, which is tomorrow night. So they rested, in other words, Thursday night. Oh my gosh, I thought it was Friday night.
Thursday night too.
Yeah, 2 nights. So the 25th day of Kislev is when they finally won the war and the fighting ended. So they rested on the 25th, and that's when they were able to come back and, rededicate the temple. So Chanukah, that's what's in the word Chanukah. Nice, cute little idea there. While we're on the topic, it's actually interesting to note that when the Jews were traveling in the desert, so they stopped at 42 different places along the way. The 25th stop was a city called Hashmona, which is like the Hashmonaim, the Hasmoneans, who were behind the whole Hanukkah miracle. So that's kind of one of the hints to the Hanukkah story in the Torah itself, is this idea that the 25th stop is Hashmona. Okay. Now, another reason why we call Hanukkah, why the holiday is called Hanukkah. This one you would never guess. Okay. Here we go. It goes like this. Every letter of the word Hanukkah is an acronym for another word. It goes like this. Ches is like 8. Ches is the 8th letter of the alphabet. So Ches is the numerical value of Ches is 8. Ches and then Nun, Neros. Ches, Neros. The Halachah, Kebeis Hillel. So we got 5 letters. Ches, Neros, the Halachah, Kebeis Hillel. Got that? What does that mean? That on Hanukkah we light 8 candles and we follow the opinion of Beis Hillel. What's going on here? Why would we not light 8 candles? Who's Beis Hillel? What did he say? What's this all about? Let's take a look. So we're going to open up our page here, and instead, I'm afraid we're not able to share our page, but hopefully it will be clear just from us discussing here. So take a look at the top of this page, the page with the English. Now you are looking at a page of Gemara. The top part. Top part is a page of Gemara. On the right-hand side, you have Tosfos, the opinion of Tosfos. On the left-hand side, you have Rashi. And this is how every standard page of Gemara looks. On the inside of the page is always Rashi. On the outside of the page is Tosfos. They were related, Rashi and Tosfos, pretty much. And in the middle is the Gemara. So we're going to look at the Gemara. Now, it's interesting to note that there is no mention of Hanukkah in the entire Mishnah. Fascinating. There's a whole tractate on Megillah. There's a whole tractate on Rosh Hashanah. There's a whole tractate on Sukkot. There's a whole tractate on Yom Kippur. But there's nothing about Hanukkah. So one of the explanations that I saw for this, and obviously we can't take this too literally, we have to kind of understand what this actually means, but who wrote the Mishnah?
Who wrote it? Yehuda Nasi.
Yehuda Nasi. Yehuda Nasi came from which tribe?
Ostensibly Yehuda, but who knows?
Yehuda.
Okay.
Yes. Tribe of Yehuda. Yehuda was always the family from which kingship came from. All the kings were meant to come from the family of Yehuda. Now, famously, the Hashmonaim, the Hasmoneans, who were Kohanim, so they were not from the family of King David, or from Yehuda, they made a mistake. That after the whole miracle, and after they they fixed everything up, instead of handing over the kingship to the family of Yehuda, they kept it for themselves. And so they became the Kohen Gadol and the king. And that wasn't a good move. That wasn't the way it should be. And because of that, Rabbi Yehuda Anasi, who was from the tribe of Yehuda, who rightfully deserved the kingship, when he came to write the Mishnah, it almost didn't align that he should write the laws of Hanukkah, which in a certain way, him coming from Yehuda and them taking away the pride of Yehuda, it just didn't make sense. So the commentaries try to understand, like, what does this mean? Yehuda Anasi had some sort of, agenda against Hanukkah. Maybe you think he didn't celebrate Hanukkah. Of course he celebrated Hanukkah. But there's something to it. There's something behind that. Anyway, just interesting to note. The Mishnah does not discuss Hanukkah. There's no tractate on Hanukkah. Even the Gemara spends just a couple of lines about Hanukkah. And this is in
Where's that? Oh,
Shabbos.
in Shabbos.
Tractate Shabbos. Tractate Shabbos talks about Hanukkah, and that's what we're going to read right now. So take a look at the Gemara. It's a little small, so we'll go through it together. Ready? So the idea here is it's Bayis Mali Svarim. We're learning how to read from the actual books. So as best as you can, try to follow along. We're on the top line of the Gemara. Jeff, you see?
Yes, middle.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So you see that? It says Tanu Rabbanon. That is an acronym for Tanu Rabbanon. Our sages taught says like this. Mitzvahs Chanukah ner ishu basic. The mitzvah of Chanukah, the most basic way to fulfill the mitzvah of Chanukah is one candle for each household. Now imagine what that means. That basically means that keeping Chanukah would mean one light every night of Chanukah, and that's all you have to do. So no whole menorah with 8, just one. One candle for each night of Chanukah. Now, v'hamahadrin, somebody who wants to go the extra mile, should light a candle for each member of his family. But again, not 8 candles, one each night.
For each person.
For each person.
Right.
Now, v'hamahadrin min hamahadrin, somebody who wants to really be meticulous in the mitzvah can do the following. Beishama Imrim. Beishamai says the way that you'll do the mahadrin min mahadrin is to be madlik shmona mikan ve'elach peichot ve'elach, to light 8, and then from then on go 7, 6, 5, 4, etc. Well, Beis Hillel say no. Yom Rishon madlik echad mikan ve'elach moshe ve'elach. The first night you light 1, and then you go up to 8. So turns out that the very fact that we are lighting 8 candles on Hanukkah is the mahadrin min hamahadrin, the most meticulous way to fulfill the mitzvah. Okay, now the Gemara continues, and we won't read this inside unless you want to. The Gemara continues and says that what's behind Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel's argument? Why do they say what they say? So the answer is, the Gemara says, Beis Hillel says that you start with 1 and go up to 8 because there's a rule in matters of holiness, you always go up. You always grow. You never go down, you always go up. If you start with 1, you go up to 8. Or because we look at it as how many days are behind us. How many days have we celebrated? So on the first night, this is the first night you're celebrating, so you light 1. 2, this is the second night, so you're lighting 2. So you look at the nights that have passed. How many days have we celebrated? Beis Shammai looks at it completely the opposite. He looks at it and says, you light 8 the first night because you have 8 days coming. Second night, you only have 7 days coming. Third day, so basically he looks at it as how many days are left of the holiday. Another explanation behind Beis Shammai, the Gemara says, is that you have to put your head in the mind of the sages here. The sages are creating a new holiday. So they have to figure out how to celebrate this holiday. And to do that, they want to try to find precedent in the Torah itself for what they want to do. So the Torah says, they want to try to find in the Torah, is there any indication of either going down in number or up in number? So Beis Shammai says, there's a precedent. In the holiday of Sukkot, we offer the bulls. There's a certain amount of sacrifices each day of Sukkot that are offered. We start with 13 on the first day, and I think it goes 11, and then
13, 12.
13, 12, and then
11, 10, 9,
it drops off, basically. So the point is, Beis Shammai said, look, we have precedent where we go down in number, and therefore we're going to follow that. Okay, so this is what Gemara explains, why Beis Shammai says what they say, Beis Hillel say what they say. So now we understand when Chanukah stands for Ches Neiris, the Halachah Beis Hillel. Every one of those words is not so simple. The fact that we light 8 candles is not really the most obvious way to celebrate Hanukkah. What's the most basic way? 1 candle. So Ches Neiris says, no. The way Hanukkah should be celebrated is 8 candles. Do the mahadrin min mahadrin. Do the meticulous way. The halacha Beis Hillel, and how should you light those 8 candles? Like Beis Hillel. Start with 1, going up to 8. Clear? All right. So now,
What about, you said earlier, 1 candle per family member?
Yeah.
And what we end up doing, I assume it's not by regulation, but by custom, is we light a Hanukkah, Hanukkah for each member of the family.
Yeah.
At least in most families do that.
Yeah.
And where does that come from?
So I think that it's from the Gemara itself. So we start off with the Gemara says the most basic way is just do one. Then it says do one for everybody. And then it says, if you really want to do the best way, is to do 8 for everybody. Make sense?
8 for each. Okay. Oops.
Yeah, exactly.
I
1,
lost.
2, 3, 4, 5.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So one of the questions that is asked about this is that nowhere in the Torah, nowhere in Halachah, do you find this idea of a 3-tiered kind of way of fulfilling a mitzvah. Imagine, matzah is the most basic way of fulfilling matzah. Then there's like the mahadrin, it's premium, and then there's like extra premium. We never find that anywhere. In general, mitzvahs, there's a way to keep a mitzvah. If you want to go the extra mile, you want to be more meticulous, you want to buy a nicer esrog, a more, kosher matzah. There's two tiers. There's the basic, and then anything above the basic is called mahadrin. You're going the extra mile. Why is it that by Hanukkah we have this 3 tiers, and not only that, it's like obvious that we all keep the most premium way of fulfilling the mitzvah, and it's in the word Hanukkah. It's in the name Hanukkah, Chesnerus. What by Hanukkah is this playing out? That there's this mahadrin, mina mahadrin, specifically by Hanukkah and not by any other mitzvah. It's a question which has bothered, all, sages and rabbis, and many different answers are brought. But I want to present one which I think is very beautiful that the Rebbe spoke about. The Rebbe says like this. It says, in general, the way Hashem works is Hashem does things, what we call midah keneged midah. Right? So there's always a reflection. The way we act is how Hashem responds. The way Hashem acts is how we respond. So for example, if a person goes the extra mile and gives extra tzedakah, Hashem says, I will also go beyond myself and give you more than you were destined to get. A person goes and pushes himself in a certain area, Hashem goes the extra mile and does something special for him. The holidays really are all like this. So we were slaves in Egypt. We were stuck. Hashem took us out. We celebrate Pesach, commemorating what Hashem did for us. Sukkot, we were in the desert. We had no shade. It was terrible. We needed something. God came, gave us shade. So we commemorate that by sitting in a sukkah. So in each situation, you have our fulfillment of the mitzvah is corresponding to what Hashem did for us. So we were stuck in a situation. Hashem needed to get us out of it. He did. And we celebrate, we commemorate it that way. Purim is the same thing. Purim, we were going to be annihilated, and Hashem, performed the miracle. We were saved, and therefore we celebrate Purim to commemorate that. So Hanukkah is different. Hanukkah is not a commemoration of something where Hashem, was needed. Naturally, we were stuck, and Hashem came and took us out. Saved us. It's not the story of Hanukkah. The story of Hanukkah is one where the battle was over, and now they're in the Beis Hamikdash. They need oil, and they can't find pure oil. So what do? What do? They can't find kosher oil.
They need new kosher oil.
So one solution would be go make new kosher oil. Problem is, it takes 8 days for that to happen. Okay, so now you have non-kosher oil, and that's your only option. So Interesting is Halachah actually says that in such a time, when all you have is non-kosher oil, you're actually permitted to use the non-kosher oil. Because the idea is that when you're dealing with a communal issue, the laws of purity and impurity can be somewhat overlooked because we're dealing with a communal service. So technically, they didn't need to find pure oil. They could have used the impure oil. So Hashem, in the case of the Hanukkah story, did a miracle that was really unnecessary. They could have used the impure oil. What happened? Hashem saw how much they wanted to keep the mitzvah of Hanukkah. And Hashem said, I'm going to go and do a miracle to make the oil last. So Hashem did an unnecessary miracle. The way we commemorate that is by doing an unnecessary commemoration. By doing the Mahadrim in a Mahadrin, by going the extra mile, by keeping the mitzvah in a way that is totally unnecessary. Basic mitzvah of Hanukkah is to light one candle. We go the extra mile, 8. And that's why we stress the Mahadrin min Mahadrin, because that's what the whole story of Hanukkah is all about. It's about the desire of the Jewish people to fulfill a mitzvah in the most beautiful way. Hashem does an unnecessary miracle to facilitate that, and therefore we commemorate the mitzvah by also doing an unnecessary step of going the extra mile, something we don't have to do. It's a beautiful, beautiful idea of the story of Hanukkah. Now, why is it that out of all holidays, the idea of Mahadrin, Mina Mahadrin, Hashem doing an unnecessary miracle, played out in Hanukkah? Why didn't Hashem do an unnecessary miracle by Purim? Maybe after they won the war by Purim, maybe money could have grown on trees, and there would be an unnecessary miracle, and we would, celebrate Purim in some special way because of that. Why did it happen by Hanukkah? So here we come to our levush. Okay, take a look at this levush. Now, who's the levush? Let's talk a little bit about the levush before we read them inside. So you see this, it says levush hachor, you see that? You see it says, in the middle it says Hilchos Chanukah, Siman Tav Reish Aleph. That's just telling you that we're discussing the laws of Chanukah, and this is, the area of Halachah we're talking about. But the name of the book is Levush Hachor. Now, why is this called Levush Hachor? Why is this book called Levush Hachor? So the author of this book, his name was Mordechai Yaffe. He lived in the 1500s, and he was a fascinating character. He grew up in Prague, but then there was an expulsion from Prague, and he got expelled along with his family. He moved to Italy. He was a rabbi in Italy. Then he was a rabbi in a different place in Italy. Then he was a rabbi in Eastern Europe. Then back to Prague. Then Bohemia, just everywhere. And he lived, and it's pretty amazing, for that time, he lived till the ripe old age of 87. And so he had many posts, many communities. He was an amazing person. And he wrote this book called The Levush. Now, his name is Mordechai. Mordechai's name shows up in the story of Purim. And therefore, he modeled his books off of Mordechai's robes. We know in the Purim story that Mordechai gets dressed in the king's robes. And so it's called Levushei Mordechai, the clothing of Mordechai. So the books that he wrote, he all titled after that. So each book, he titled a different type of clothing. So there's the Levush Achur. Achur, I think, actually means linen clothing. Then there's the Levush Tcheles, the colorful clothing. So each one was written on a different part of Jewish law, and it modeled that. So we're talking about Mordechai Yaffe. He wrote this book that we're going to read, and what we're going to read together is a very, very famous explanation that he gives to the story of Hanukkah. Now, before we get into it, he's going to answer a very basic question which is asked about Hanukkah, and that is, by Hanukkah, we don't find that there's any mitzvah to have a meal, to have a feast. Purim, we sit down and have a feast. Hanukkah, we don't have that. So the question is, why not? If it was, as the saying goes, trying to kill us, we won, let's eat. So it should be a mitzvah to eat. So why are we not eating? Why is there no mitzvah to feast? So here is where the levush comes in. So let's read it together. Okay, so you see where the base is?
Yep.
In the bush? Okay, so it's kind of small. So let's read it again. Here we go. Since the Jews did not succumb, they were not under a ruler who tried to kill them, like by Haman. The enemy came to war. But all they wanted from the Jews at the time was to succumb, to subdue themselves to their laws, and to make them, rule over the Jewish people and take away the religion. As Antiochus did. And this is the top of the next column, he made all sorts of decrees to try and make them, get rid of their religion. As apparently it was common that if you held one religious belief and you conquered another nation, you made them follow your religious beliefs. If the Jews had agreed, had the Jews agreed and paid taxes and followed the Greek ways, fourth line on the second column, they wouldn't have wanted anything more. So basically, Antiochus in the Hanukkah story was only interested in the Jews converting. Hello, end of the fourth line. Hashem made a miracle and the Jewish people won. Therefore, the way they commemorated how we should celebrate it is to praise Hashem and thank Him. Not to rejoice, not to feast. Since all they wanted to do is take away our religion, and with Hashem's help, they didn't succeed. On the fact that Hashem did not desert us and brought us back to His service. Avol, and now this is the contrast to the story of Purim. Avol b'mei Haman, but in the story of Haman, but in the time of Haman, where what Hashem was, what Haman was interested in is to destroy the Jewish people. Not necessarily even our souls. He didn't really care about that. Even if they had been willing to give up their Judaism, Haman would still want to have killed them. Therefore, we celebrate Purim with a physical celebration because what was at stake was our physical selves. Whereas in the story of Hanukkah, it was our souls, it was our beliefs that was at stake. Okay, so what's the Levush saying? He's saying the difference between Hanukkah and Purim is Hanukkah was a decree against our souls, it was against our beliefs, it was against our religion. Purim was against our bodies. Therefore, we celebrate Purim by rejoicing with our bodies. We celebrate Halal with rejoicing with our souls by doing spiritual things like mitzvahs. And that's the idea. And that explains why Hashem specifically went out of His way to do the special mitzvah, the special miracle by the story of Hanukkah, because really Hanukkah is all about that. Hanukkah is a holiday which is a celebration of victory of our Torah over other beliefs. And therefore the place where Hashem is going to give us an opportunity for an extra push in the area of mitzvahs is by Hanukkah. Because really that's what Hanukkah is all about. Hanukkah is a celebration of us being able to continue living with our Torah, with our beliefs, and fighting the darkness that tries to take that away from us. Okay, beautiful. Now, turn over your pages. This is, what you're looking here is, I'll find it out here so you can see it. So what you're looking at is a page of the Torah. The Torah. Who is the Torah? The Torah was written by Rabbi Yaakov ben Asher. Yaakov ben Asher was the first person to codify Jewish law into 4 sections, the way we have it today in the Shulchan Aruch. Shulchan Aruch really mimics the style of the Torah. He grew up in Spain, where his father had fled to, because his father was under persecution, and they fled to Spain. He grew up in Spain. He was very, 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 very poor, but he is known for writing the Torah. Now, that's the middle section right here. On the right of that, you see it says Beis Yosef on the top. That column underneath the Beis Yosef, that is the writings of the Rabbi Yosef Karo. Who is Rabbi Yosef Karo? So a little bit of a history of who Rabbi Yosef Karo was. Rabbi Yosef Karo is the author of the Shulchan Aruch. What was his life? Who was he? What did he do? See, he was also born in Spain, but at the age of 4 years old, they were expelled, along with all the Jews from Spain. And he moved from there to, I think, Bulgaria. He grew up, he was an amazing scholar, he had different rabbinic positions, but he ended up moving to Tzfat. And he lived in Tzfat for many, many, many years, and he wrote the Shulchan Aruch there. He not only was somebody who was very well versed in Halachah, he was also very well versed in Kabbalah. And one of the very fascinating books that exist from him is called the Magid Meisharim. This book of Magid Meisharim is a book of Kabbalah, which we are told he wrote based on teachings that were taught to him by an angel. So over a certain period of time, a Magid, a certain angel, would come to him and teach him Torah. And this book called the Magid Meisharim is from these times where he studied with this angel, which is kind of wild because this was 500 years ago. This was not, wasn't thousands of years ago. But this is Rabbi Yosef Karo. So now, what happened was, before he wrote the Shulchan Aruch, he wrote a commentary on the Torah, and based on the commentary, he wrote the Shulchan Aruch. Now, he has a very, very, very famous question on the Hanukkah story, which many, 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 many people try to answer. And even there's a book which was put together of all the answers to this question. I think it's like 100 answers to this question. And the question goes as follows. Let's read it inside. See what that arrow is? The Ikala Meidak. Now it's in Rashi letters, so I know it's not what you're used to, but let's try to work it out. The Ikala Meidak, we can ask, why did they establish Shmoyne Yomim, that we celebrate for 8 days? What's the problem? Before we go further, what do you think the question should be? Why shouldn't we celebrate 8 days? It was a miracle for 8 days. Why not?
This first day, there was one day.
Wonderful. So the question is, if they found a jug of oil, then the miracle wasn't for 8 days, it was for 7 days. Because the jug of oil is good for 1 day. Okay, let's read it inside. The kivin, second wide line. The kivin to shem and shibapacha, since there was enough oil in there to light one night. It turns out that the miracle was only necessary for one night. Okay, famous question. Here we go. The Yeshleimar, he answers. They split the oil in the jug into 8 portions. They poured a little bit each night. And the miracle was that it lasted until the morning. Amazing. So that explains why every night there was a miracle, because only a drop was actually poured in, and yet it burned throughout the night. Okay. Another answer. After they poured the oil into the menorah, Geshir, the proper amount, Nishir hapach malik b'tchila. The jug remained full, like the story of Elisha. The jug remained full even though they poured the oil out. The nikra nes af b'layla rishona, and therefore even on the first night there was a miracle. Okay, So this is a famous question and a famous answer that's given on this. Now, there's a beautiful story which is told of the Maggid of Mezrich. Maggid of Mezrich was the second in line of the Hasidic movement. There was Baal Shem Tov. Baal Shem Tov had a student who was the Maggid. Maggid of Mezrich was the Rebbe of the Hasidic movement. Now, Maggid of Mezrich had a son. His son's name was Avram. And this Avram, he was called Avram the Malach, Avram the angel. Why was he called the angel? Because he lived like an angel. He didn't eat, he didn't sleep. He was like this amazing person. So he's called Avram the Malach. So Avram the Malach, when he was a little kid, he wasn't yet a Malach. He was just a little regular kid. So he came to his father once and was crying. And he said, "What's wrong?" He says, "Well, the kids, we were playing hiding and seek. And I hid in such a good place that the kids couldn't find me." So his father says, "What's the problem? That means you won the game." And to cry about. He said, No. I was hiding in such a good place, they couldn't find me. And after a while, they just stopped looking for me. And so I was left to hide with nothing going on, and they deserted me. So he felt pretty bad. So his father, hearing his son say that, got very emotional. And he turned his eyes heavenward. And he said, "God, is that not the story of our relationship with you? That you hide yourself so well that we look and we look and we look. And after a while, you give up. You give up searching." And a very powerful idea that, the fact is that God is hidden in nature. And it's our job to search. And the credit goes to us for not giving up after all these hundreds and thousands of years of still searching, of still connecting. But that is another answer. This idea is another answer to the question. The question was, what's the miracle on the first night if there's enough oil? So one of the answers that's given is, you're right. The miracle of the first night was not the oil. It was something else. What was the miracle on the first night? So different answers are given. One could be that it was a miracle of winning the war. The first night is about celebrating the winning of the war. The other 7 is for the miracle of the oil. But another one is that the very fact that they found that one jug remained. What are the chances that they managed to destroy every single thing and one remained? And that one they managed to find. So that itself was the miracle. The miracle is that it was left, it was one remained, and not only that they searched for it. They didn't give up. They didn't say, it's over, everything's been defiled, we're tired, we're finished. They kept on looking, and they found it, which ties into the story of how, searching, even though, perhaps it seems out of reach. Okay, let's conclude with one more beautiful idea. So we said that Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel argue how to light the menorah. Either start with 8 or you start with 1. So the Rebbe has a beautiful perspective on this. He says, think about the Hanukkah story. You had a situation where the Hanukkah lights they were coming to light the menorah after the temple was defiled. And so they're coming to a place which was not holy anymore. And you had to rededicate it. So says the Rebbe, that idea of coming to, refine the temple exists within every single one of us, because we know that we are a mini temple, because God resides within us. And therefore, the way that existed back then, the way that they went about, fixing up the temple to purify it, exists within us as well. And that happens every Hanukkah, where we are searching, we're looking to cleanse ourselves and clean ourselves up after maybe we've defiled a part of us which is very holy and spiritual. Maybe we haven't given enough attention to that spiritual part to ourselves, and we're defiled, like the temple was defiled back then. And Hanukkah is a time to give that attention and to look to refine that part of ourselves. How do we do that? What's the method to refine ourselves if you find that you're not where you should be? There's an argument. Beis Hillel says the way you should do it is start with 1 candle. Beis Shammai says start with 8. What's going on? So we know that Beis Shammai always, in most cases, is the one who goes more strict. Beis Shammai had a very high bar. Beis Shammai felt, had a very high expectation for people, for things, and therefore the Beis Shammai is always on the more stricter side. Beis Hillel is always more on the more lenient side. And the reason why we follow Beis Hillel is because Beis Hillel understood people better. Beis Hillel understood people's challenges. So if we take that to the story, Beis Shammai says, if a person really wants to clean himself up, you can't just stick your toe in and, go nice and slow and expect that you're going to clean up this part of yourself that you defiled. No, it doesn't work like that. You got to go full throttle and get yourself out of there and turn your life around. If you're in a bad place, that's it. Cut it out. 8 candles, all lights on, all engines, running. But Beis Hillel takes the opposite point. Beis Hillel says, if you find yourself spiritually defiled and you're looking to brighten up that part of yourself, start with 1 candle. Start with 1, mitzvah. Start with 1 good deed. That will lead to another. That will lead to another. That will lead to another until by the end of it, all the lights are shining. And that's what he says. In matters of holiness, it's a journey. We're going up and up and up and up until you get there. Because once a person tastes, the beauty of 1 mitzvah, it leads to another, until you're a different person. Which is connected to a beautiful story, which I heard, is that Rabbi Chaim Gutnick, who was a rabbi in Australia, he went to the Rebbe once, and the Rebbe told him that when he gives sermons, he should make sure to include in a sermon a practical message, something practical. So not just to talk about the parsha, an idea, something practical that a person can do. Fine. So then when he came back, he started doing that. And so one of the first weeks, he decided to talk about Shabbos, keeping Shabbos. And he noticed there was a person who maybe wasn't so involved, or he wasn't doing much with the shul, but this person slowly but surely started getting much more involved until he was really much more involved in the shul. And so after a while, Rabbi Gutnick mustered up the courage to say, what's behind the sudden change that you're all of a sudden so involved in the shul? What happened? So the guy said, I'll be honest with you. You came that Shabbos and you started talking about keeping Shabbos. So I decided that I'm going to stop smoking on Shabbos. Small thing, stop smoking on Shabbos. And that felt good. So I decided to add something else, until here I am, a much more involved, committed person involved in Shabbos because I started with that small thing. And that's the message that Beis Hillel is saying here, is that when a person is coming to refine himself, to connect with that spiritual side of himself, you can start with 1. And that can lead you to go further. Beis Shammai says, nothing to talk about. All the 8 lights have to be on. But Beis Hillel says, start with 1. And then you grow and you grow and you grow. As long as you're looking to grow, you can start with just that 1, and it will take you on an upward trajectory. So I want to wish you a very happy Hanukkah, and we should experience a lot of light.
I always seem to have a question at the end.
Yeah, go for it.
Let's go back to the very beginning about not feasting for Hanukkah.
Yeah.
So we eat latkes and sufganiyot.
Mm-hmm.
I always thought it was because we're celebrating the oil lasting the 8 days. So we eat foods made from oil.
Mm-hmm.
But what you're saying is there's there's no religious, it's just a custom, of course,
Exactly. It's just a custom.
but okay.
I mean, the famous joke goes that, why do we eat latkes and chocolate coins and donuts on Hanukkah?
Yeah.
Because the Greeks were very into their physique. You know how so we want to make sure that by the end of Hanukkah, we are so out of shape, we look nothing like a Greek. So it is a custom, but that's the difference. And on Purim it's a mitzvah, and on Hanukkah it's just a custom.
Okay. So, well, yeah, but it's something that we've taught our kids for at least in my family generations. But okay.
Yeah.
Okay, just a
Good stuff.
custom.
Okay.
Good
Yeah.
stuff.
Thank you.
Happy Hanukkah.
Happy